This demo video is a continuation of setting up the Centrify Server Suite for evaluation. This specific video is for installing the Unix agent, and I'll be doing it in a couple different ways. Please refer to the other videos for the backend setup. There's two other videos, one for setting up the backend before the software, what you got to do in ADuct and downloading the software, things like that, and then the second video is actually installing the Centrify software, setting up the zones, setting up your test users, those kind of things. Please refer to those videos for details on that. Here we're going to be installing a Unix Linux agent. So again, first of all, make sure you're verifying the back end. We're putting our policies inside of AD, the agents download all the policies, and then we're ready to go. So we want to make sure all those policies are ready to go in AD, including that our test user can log in. So now we install the agent, we join to a zone, and we should be good to go. So you got to already download the Centrify agent packages for your operating system. There's also an all agents zip file. So from the Centrify support portal, there's a download page. If you have access to it, you should be able to get the Centrify Server Suite 2017 packages. And this is specifically for the agents. You can either scroll down and get one at a time, or you can get the whole agents package. If you have more than 2 or 3 operating systems, just get the whole agents package. It's pretty easy. On the Unix machines themselves, you got to do some preparation. Normally in DNS, what this means is modifying etchresolve.conf to point to Active Directory's DNS. If you're using a static IP, you also want to add that Unix machine's IP address into Active Directory's DNS. You also want to make sure that the IP address range is inside of sites and services. Maybe that subnet is a new subnet because it's on the Unix side. Make sure it's in AD's sites and services. The Centrify agent uses sites and services to download its information, know its closest domain controller, and things like that. So we want to make sure that's valid. We want to verify the machine is ready to join Active Directory. Inside the Deployment Manager GUI, which is one way we can deploy the agent, there's actually an analyze function. This is the same thing as the AD check tool. It's this tool that checks to see if that Unix machine is ready to join Active Directory. It's a good tool to send ahead of time to Unix administrators to make sure everything's ready to join. We'll talk about that in detail as well. And you got to have some local Unix credentials, basically a deployment account. There's no Active Directory user on these machines yet because they're just standard Linux machines. So all we have is local accounts. So we got to have an account that I can log into. We're going to put those credentials in. We also need to have rights, either the root password or sudo rights to add packages and do root-like stuff. And then we got a decision, basically creation of the Unix machine account, the object inside of Active Directory. When you make those machine objects, they have to exist. So we're joining a Unix machine to AD, just like a Windows machine. That object has to exist. Who's going to make that object? Either ahead of time, sometimes the AD administrator can pre-create that Unix object, just like they can pre-create the Windows object for the machine. Or we can do it during join. So during the join, there's an option to add in a user ID who has permission inside that container to create the object. So again, Centrify doesn't care where the actual computers go, but that does affect things for where you put the OUs and things like that. When you put these machines into an OU, group policies affect that, but we don't care inside the Centrify zones. But we do have to create the object. That's one of the rules inside of Active Directory. So this is really important because a lot of times people forget that for an eval. When they go to do the join, the machine hasn't been pre-created, or they don't have permissions anywhere inside of AD to create the computer object. Next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to install the agent and join to a Centrify zone using one of 3 options. There's actually a couple more options in this, but the main 3 options are using the Deployment Manager GUI. It's a nice GUI that uses SSH credentials to log into any machine with SSH, which is Unix and Macs, push out the package and do the installations and join the zone. We can also manually push the packages out and then install them manually. There's an install.sh wrapper script that we can run, and that'll wrap around all the actual RPMs and things like that to do the actual package install and then do the join back to Active Directory. Or we can do it all manually. You can actually do an RPM for the Red Hat and CentOS RPM package manager to add all the packages we need, and then we do the AD join command manually. That's pretty good to learn. A lot of times you might be pushing these packages out manually for testing, and then knowing how to use the AD join command is a good thing. You can also do some other things like satellite servers and Casper and stuff like that to push out the packages once we're talking about deployment into production. But these are the 3 main ways for evaluation. And at the very end, we want to verify the agent's running, do a couple commands, make sure everything looks good, and then we want to test the user logon. So let me go to my virtual machines. So what we want to do here is, one thing, make sure it's in DNS. So I have 2 machines that I'm going to be installing, 2 Linux machines. One is called nsn6. And I've already added to my Active Directories DNS, so this is just verifying everything's good. The other one is new CentOS. So these two machines are in AD. If I bring up PuTTY, I have a local machine account I can log in as. Make sure resolve.conf set up. I have mine set up ready to go for my one machine. I can even check the other machine I'll be doing, the 28, same thing. So I'm ready. These machines are both ready to join, or at least they have the DNS part ready to join DNS, and I'll also be using some other tools to analyze them. So what we want to do is now we can actually run the deployment manager. It's going to require some software. I've already downloaded the agents package. So I went and got the all agents package. So what we need to do is we need to unzip this. All right, so it extracted. Now I can go inside of here, and these are basically all the agent packages. If you would have downloaded one at a time, you would have got some of these individually. I just went and got them all in that one zip. So I have the software ready to go. I'm going to bring up the deployment manager. This was the access manager down here. Again, make sure we're already set up. This video is assuming you're already set up with a global zone and 3 child zones. And then the specific video, we're going over Linux. We're going to be joining machines to this Linux child zone. And I already have, if I go in here again, just some recap. If I go into right-click on any zone, I can say show effective Unix user rights, and my Diana Worth is ready to go. She's my test user. So let me bring up the deployment manager. Might take a second the very first time you bring it up. First time you launch deployment manager, it's got to build a little database to set everything up. So it's all ready to go here. We need to get the software. So inside deployment manager here, download the software. I can click on that button. We don't really need to go now because I've already downloaded the software manually. So that way I can go down here and say copy from a network drive and go to where I put that software. So mine was the agents. Note it's saying importing product catalog. Product catalog is just a meta list of all the other agents, so we know exactly what's involved in all the what are all the packages in this suite release. Might take a second. So it finishes up, hit finish. So now I have all the software I need to push out. So now I can add some computers. So I'm in this little wizard part right here, so I can click right here and add computers. I can do one at a time. I can do the IP address or the name. So first one I'm going to do here is new CentOS. New CentOS. I can put the name because I already put it in DNS. It should find it. 28, there you go, all good. So this is my local account to log in as. It's called deploy. And then he either has a sudo password or su. So if you don't have a sudo for that guy and you know the root password, we can do su. If your particular local guy has a password, then we type that in for sudo. The sudo password, this is the actual password for the account itself. So now it's out there working. So if you look on the left side here, you see that little tiny hourglass. I can open this up, click on that, and it even says what it's doing, retrieving information from new CentOS. I can grab this little bar here and move it over, get a little more room so I can read. And then again, this little hourglass tells me what it's doing. It's retrieving information from new CentOS. Basically, it's going out, logging in with those credentials, looking at operating system information. It's going to get some information about users and groups, and then it'll return to us in a second. So all finished. It should show up here. My new CentOS machine. I can expand it on the left side, click on history, and it says what it did. It went out to discover, and it was success. And if you want to look through this, and it tells you what it did. but basically it went and got some information about it. It knows it's a new CentOS is the host name. It knows its operating system, its platform. Some information you can go across here. You can look at it. We don't have any Centrify installed on it right now. I can go into users. Oh, great, someone called me. So I'll go into users and groups here. This is some information it got. So now that I have this information, what I can do is now we can analyze it. This is the equivalent of the AD check tool, which we'll be showing later how to do it manually. So I can right click on this and choose Analyze Environment. This is the name of the domain. And then how many domain controllers? Let's pause. Okay, always remember to turn off your instant messaging when you're doing a video. So this is the Analyze function here. It's the equivalent to the AD check. We put in the name of our domain, and then how many domain controllers. You don't have to do everything you have. Usually 2 or 3 is okay. You have to do the analyze before you can actually install the software through the GUI. It'll come back with some warnings and some errors. You got to clear up all the errors. Clean that up. So again, on the left side, you'll see some hourglass. It says it's running AD check. AD check shouldn't take that long. I'll just pause it for a second. All right, so when AD check finishes, or the analyze function finishes, you can go to history, and it shows you analyze environment success, open issues, basic environment DNS servers. In my little environment, I have in my etsyresolve.conf and things like that, I have a .11 for a second DNS server. I just don't have it up. It's only a warning. That's fine. I don't need a second DNS server for my small Eval network. I don't have to clean up any warnings. Warnings are just fine. If I had errors, you'd have to be able to clean up the error before you can go further. I can right click on here now and I can say manage software. This would be grayed out if you had any errors. You have to clean up all the errors. So now I can say manage software, and I can now, I'm going to push out software to it. We're going to do the standard edition. Hit next. Going through all this. So now here's a standard package, Centrify Direct Control. That's the name of the standard agent that does the AD bridging zones and privileged identity management and things like that. The OpenSSH, this is optional. So this is the actual agent itself, and this is our other package for OpenSSH. You don't have to install that. We know ours works with GSS API. The GSS API is how you do single sign-on with Kerberos tickets. So we've got our OpenSSH tested and working. A lot of people don't want to use theirs. I see that a lot, especially on people that spend a lot of time customizing their OpenSSH to make it work a certain way. Again, this is not required. If you want to do single sign-on, you just have to make sure your SSH handles Kerberos tickets, so it handles the GSS API. I'm going to go ahead and install that. We do have some extra bells and whistles that Centrify has added into our OpenSSH, so it's a good tool. So I do not want to join AutoZone. We already had a zone we made, the Linux zone, so I'm going to specifically join the Linux zone. So this is what we talked about before, creating computer objects. So my Diana Worth that I'm logged in now has permissions to create the computer object where I'm going to put this agent, or I'm going to put this computer object. I'm actually going to put it in a container. So for what zone am I going to join? I can go in here. I can just hit find now if I don't have that small or that big of an AD. Mine's nice and small. I could type it in if I needed to. I'm just going to join the Linux zone, and then I want to go to a specific container. I don't want to go to computers. I like to put I have a place called Linux servers. This is important if you're doing desktops. So server licenses are more expensive than desktop licenses. Workstation basically means desktop. So this is actually going to use as a server, so I'm going to use a server license for this. These are service principal names, SPNs. It's really important to understand what this is going on, what this is doing. These are setting up these SPNs inside of Active Directory. SPNs need to be unique, so some people might need to remove some of this HTTP and things like that if they already have, say, a Java or some other web service running from that same host. They might have already put an SPN in there. So you got to make sure you don't have any duplicate SPNs. Most people, if you've never joined a Unix machine AD, you won't have any kind of SPNs associated with that Unix or Linux host name, so you should be good. When we start doing group policy, if you start changing the root account, you might want to put in some different credentials here, but we're okay. We can just go ahead and keep the current credentials and then hit finish. This is going to take a couple seconds or a couple minutes here. See at the bottom what it's doing. Again, look at the left side. You see the hourglass. I can click on it and it's telling me what it's doing. It's installing software. This will take a minute or two, so we'll go ahead and pause. It is now joining the zone. See down at the bottom. And now it's updating information, so it's all finished. So after it updates all its information, you can go back to history, add software, and join the zone with success. These open issues are still from before, and none of this has changed, but at least we know that the software out there joined. If I go into when I logged on, not that machine, this machine, AD-info is a Centrify command you can run, and basically it tells us a lot of information. So it successfully joined that zone. It got sites and services. It found my closest domain controller, and I'm all joined, all good. I can do an RPM command. So if you're familiar with Centrify, you might see a couple packages here a little bit different than you're used to. Here's the standard agent direct control. Inside the standard agent used to be curl, OpenSSL, and then the OpenLDAP. These are all new. You might see that we are now have to do it manually. If you're going to install manually, we'd have to do all that manually. So they're actually required. You used to just see the direct control. And then the OpenSSH is something we did because we wanted to install it. That is optional. So this is all installed. I can even show you inside of my ADUCT if I do a refresh and I go to Linux servers. There should be my new CentOS. So again, the computer object is completely different from where the Centrify zones are. The computer object is just like any other computer object, whether it's Windows or anything else. It's an object in AD that Active Directory thinks is a Windows machine. We're just putting it in there. It's really a CentOS machine. We know it's CentOS and has a Centrify agent on there. So this is this Linux servers. This is where I'm putting computer objects. Centrify doesn't care. All the Centrify stuff is under Centrify zones, remember. Okay? And then the computer objects down there. The Centrify admin has full rights up here. He does not have to have rights down here. Now my person does because I actually had the same admin did the join command and had rights on this. But this could be separation of duties. You can pre-create objects. You can have someone different doing the joins and building the computer objects than whoever's the Centrify admin. So it's all available for separation of duties. And again, I'm all logged onto that machine. So when we did the right-click inside of a zone and we said show effective Unix user rights Diana Worth, the equivalent of that command essentially is AD query user. So I have Diana Worth coming up there. So that's the equivalent of the show effective user. So Diana Worth is all set up, should all be ready to go. So now, if I bring up Putty, log into that machine with Diana Worth, this is my AD password. Created home directory. We will create the home directory upon first login. So we're all good to go. We just logged in with our AD credentials. Now one thing you know is this Putty by default is set up to use GSAPI, GSS API. So if I was to use, I could use my Kerberos ticket by or typing in the name. So once I type this in, once I type dworth, if you notice that it didn't ask me for a password, it's because it used the Kerberos ticket because the SSH package that's on here, the Centrify version, is set up to allow GSS API, and then so is the Putty. So we sent that over. This will use the GSS API, and that used our Kerberos ticket to log us in as single sign-on. Plus, additionally, the reason why Centrify let that in, something we really didn't go over earlier, is inside this person, Diana Worth, has a login role. This login role comes from out of Centrify, out of the box. If we look at that login role and look at the system rights, they can log in with a password and single sign-on. Single sign-on is allowed. So in the future videos, we'll show some advanced features and some advanced setup. what some people like to do is set up the login like this, so only single sign-on. So you cannot log in with a password. You have to use smart cards to get Kerberos tickets to log in and things like that. So if you don't want people to log in with the passwords, we can uncheck that. But right now we're allowing passwords, and then we're also allowing single sign-on, which is why my Diana Worth is allowed to log in using GSS API. So we are all set up here now on the CentOS, so now let's get ready to install the other machine. So now I want to log in to my other machine, my other Linux machine, and I actually got this one with bigger fonts. And this one we're going to deploy Centrify manually. Instead of using the deployment tool, I can go ahead and push the packages out there. I'm just going to become root. Make my windows bigger here for you. So here's the Centrify package. All right, there's the Red Hat. This is the Red Hat. The naming is Red Hat 4 or greater, basically. I'm on Red Hat 6, CentOS 6. All right, so we got to take this package and we're going to uncompress it. Tar. So everything here just extracted everything out of that tar file. So here's that AD check tool. This is the same thing when we did the deployment manager, we did analyze. So this AD check tool is something you might want to send to Unix administrators ahead of time before you're ready to do the actual install. If you're not the Unix administrator, you send it to them, or if you are, run this tool ahead of time, because it might let you know that, hey, on this Linux machine, there's a firewall, or I can't reach the global catalog or something. Maybe there's a network firewall or even a local firewall. So you run the AD check tool. If you want to do it manually, all you got to do is put in the name of the domain. And it should be the same thing as we saw before. My two environments are set the same. My second DNS server is not up, so it's going to give me a warning about that. But other than that, I should pass everything good here. So everything passed. Two warnings. One warning about DNS not being good. My second DNS server is not up, but I got one, which is fine for an eval. And then it's let me know my current SSH package might not be configured to allow PAM and GSS API. So that's fine. Now what I want to do is I can install these packages using RPM and -I and actually install the actual packages I need. Or there's a little wrapper script called install.sh. So if we run that, it'll ask us a bunch of questions. And then we answer them and it installs it. By default, it's going to run AD check. I think there's a command line option from install, not to run it right from the beginning. We just ran it. So, pretty much everything we expected, the same thing as before. We're going to actually install the standard edition. So S, we want to do the standard edition. We do not need to run AD check. We already did that. We are good. We are going to join a domain, yes. Either hit Y or hit enter for the default. That's the name of the Active Directory domain I am joining. My user is Diana Worth. Computer name. Now this is the actual where I want to put it. And we can use the slash notation. Here's a good thing. I can go inside of my ADUCT and go down to Linux servers, go into properties, and actually grab that object. So that's where the name of the container I want to put this. Name of the zone is Linux. So again, that license question, I want to do no for server license. This is, I want to join a specific domain controller. We want to let it auto-detect. If you have an environment with more than one domain controller, you want this to auto-detect. That's a default. We do not need a reboot on most Red Hat and CentOS. We recommend you do if you want to make sure sometimes some services that rely on PAM and things like that. So here it just recapped everything it's going to do. So here's the actual standard agent direct control package. These are required packages that really are part of that. OpenSSL, OpenLDAP, and curl. You notice that some of these are new. It used to all be inside of the direct control package. What we've done is we've expanded them out and make it more modular in case we need to update a package. We can do individual ones. The LDAP proxy, we don't need that right now. We don't need NIS. And OpenSSH right now is no. So by default, all these are on. If I want to go through and change this information, we can go through, and I could go through and I can answer these one by one if I wanted to do SSH package. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to say no. Now it goes through every single one. Do you want to do the package? Yes. And it says those are all prerequisites. Do you want to do the LDAP proxy? Now I don't need that one. No. Do you want to do the NIST package? No. OpenSSH. Yeah, I do on this particular one. Direct audit. No. That's the enterprise edition. We'll do that in another video. Install express mode. No. That's the free express mode. You don't get all the bells and whistles. Do I want to run AD check? No. Join active user domain. Yes. Remember, we saw all these same questions again. The first part was just a default. Oh. So then again, now it looks more like I like it because it's the same thing, except now I'm going to install SSH. So I can just go ahead, hit enter, hit yes, and it'll install. Everything will be great. But what I want to do is I'm going to Control C out of that because that's all well and great, but what if you want to do this manually? So we're going to go ahead and install these manually. So if I do an RPM-I and I try to install a direct control package, it's going to tell me it has some dependencies. So now I can actually do these packages. So I'm going to do OpenSSL. I got to do the OpenLDAP. And then I got to do the curl. Do a little RPM just to make sure. RPM grep. So they're there. So now I can install the direct control package, DC54. It'll take a second. Pause. Installed, we can also do, I want to do the SSH package. Where is that? So when everything's all done, I can do a nice grep, RPM grep for all the Centrify products, our packages, and we should be good to go. But one thing I want to let you know is we haven't modified PAM yet. So the packages are there, but we haven't joined Active Directory, so we haven't modified PAM. So if we go into etcpam.d, where are you? There you are. If you look at that, that's the standard one. There's no Centrify in there. So we haven't modified PAM. You can see a bunch of PAM packages that Centrify has put in here. There are some extra things in here that we've done. We've put some files in there ready to make the modification, but the actual PAM configuration itself we haven't done because we still need to join Active Directory. So Centrify packages are on there. If I do AD info though, we haven't done anything yet. We haven't joined Active Directory, so it doesn't have any information. So what I can do is the command is AD join, and it's -z zone Linux -c container. And again, let me cheat here. Make sure I get this right. Copy that. So I got to know the zone and the container, and then my user Diana Worth, and then I do the name of the domain. So The name of the domain is always last. You got a couple -Z for Linux, or -Z for zone. I'm doing Linux. -C for container. -U for the ID, and then they'll prompt me for a password. I can put a -V for verbose if we run into any problems, if you want to look at it. So I'm not going to do that. This is my Active Directory password for dwork. Again, AD-info and AD-query user, there's my Diana Worth. So if I go into PuTTY, create a home directory. So first time you log in, create that home directory. So that's it. That's installing a Unix agent, joining it to a Linux zone. Talked about where to put that for the computer objects, and we talked about how to install this a couple different ways, using the deployment manager, using the install.sh wrapper script, or installing the packages manually using the RPM command. So that's all I want to show for this video. Thank you very much.